Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
The Bold and the Beautiful recap for Wednesday, October 29th, reveals that Bill Spencer's metamorphosis stunned Liam Spencer and Will Spencer as their pater. Went bite at the office. At Il Giardino, Hope Logan showed off her engagement ring to Deacon Sharp and Deke Sharp. Deacon admitted he'd lobbied hard for Hope and Liam's reunion, so he was thrilled for them along with Deke. Hope suggested about fresh thresholds and hoped perhaps Deacon could have one of his own. It was egregious that Hope and Deke still wanted Cleric to put Sheila Sharp behind him, so they were hopeful about him figuring effects out with Taylor Hayes' help. At the Precipice House, Steffi Forrester was concerned about Taylor being alone following her Ridge-Forrester bifurcation. Taylor suggested she had her children, musketeers, and worked to keep her fulfilled. Although Taylor was single for now, she suggested that it would end be ever and left Steffi curious about whether she was open to dating someone differently. Steffi sounded eager for Taylor to have her own romantic future and gave her mama some advice about taking a threat. Deacon ultimately texted Taylor and got her on the phone since he was hoping to see her again. Taylor and Deacon demanded to talk about what happened between them, so she was willing to meet with him now. At Spencer Publications, Bill and Will were enraptured over Liam's engagement. Bill also talked about making some updates at the office and trying to make the place further of a reflection of Liam. When Superintendent Cassie entered on Wednesday's B&B occasion, Bill pushed her to tell him that a particular deal was done. Cassie said it was near, so that news originally sparked Bill's vexation since it wasn't locked in yet. Still, Bill settled himself down and eventually took a bite approach with Cassie rather. After Bill acted like there was no hurry, he indeed prompted Cassie to take some time off work to spend with her grandkid. Liam and Will were impressed over the trouble Bill was putting into these changes at Spencer Publications. Bill admitted it was hard, but Liam's fire had been a good memorial of what's important in life. Latterly, Liam met up with Hope, who hoped Sheila wouldn't have to be at their marriage. There was also some talk about Hope's desire for Cleric to find someone stable, or at least someone with further toes. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers say Sheila will keep fighting for her marriage to Deacon despite the people standing against them, so stay tuned. The air in the Forrester mansion was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and unbridled anticipation. It was a celebration, though no official announcement had been made. The knowing glances, the gentle pats on Will's back, the way his mother, Steffi, would tear up looking at him and his girlfriend, Maya, it all pointed to one unspoken, universally accepted truth: Maya was pregnant. For weeks, the family had been living in a bubble of their own creation. It had started with a wave of nausea Maya experienced at a family dinner, followed by a heightened emotional sensitivity that Brooke Logan Forrester had immediately, and joyfully, identified as a telltale sign. Hope, ever the optimist, had begun knitting a tiny blanket. Ridge Forrester, the patriarch, had already started musing about legacy and the next generation. They weren't just accepting the idea, they were actively building a nursery for it in their minds, decorating it with their hopes and dreams. At the center of this whirlwind were Will and Maya. Will, young and earnest, had been swept up in the family's fervor. The initial shock had given way to a proud, if slightly terrified, acceptance. He saw the way his family looked at him, not as a kid anymore, but as a man, a future father. He saw the future they painted, him, Maya, and a beautiful baby, a new branch on the mighty Forrester Logan tree. He started standing a little taller, his voice taking on a new gravity. Maya, however, was trapped in a gilded cage of expectation. She loved Will with a ferocity that scared her sometimes, and the idea of a family with him was her deepest desire. But the assumption of her pregnancy had taken on a life of its own. She had tried, once, to voice her uncertainty. "My period is just a little late," she'd murmured to Steffi. "And I've been so stressed with work." Steffi had waved her off with a knowing smile. "Darling, that's what I said with Kelly. Trust me, a mother knows. This is it. Our little miracle." Those encouraging words, meant to soothe, had instead become shackles. How could she disappoint them? How could she shatter the crystalline joy that had transformed the family? Every time Brooke asked how she was feeling, or Hope showed her the progress on the blanket, or Ridge clapped Will on the shoulder and said, "That's my boy," the pressure mounted. She felt the truth, the irregular cycles, the stress, the sheer unlikelihood, being smothered by the weight of their collective fantasy. She was an actress in a play she never auditioned for, and the curtain was about to rise. The voice of reason, Bridget's sobering intervention. The one person who operated outside this bubble of fervent assumption was Bridget Forrester. As a doctor, her worldview was dictated by evidence, not emotion. She watched the family's behavior with a growing sense of professional and personal concern. She saw the subtle panic in Maya's eyes that everyone else mistook for blissful shock. She noticed the lack of any concrete symptoms beyond the initial, fleeting ones. During a family brunch, the pregnancy was the sole topic of conversation. Liam was suggesting names, and Hope was debating the merits of organic cotton versus bamboo for the baby's clothes. "We should really get you to a doctor, Maya," Bridget interjected, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the chatter. "We need to confirm everything is progressing well. We can't just rely on guesswork." A silence fell over the table. It was as if she had uttered a blasphemy. "Oh, Bridget, don't be such a worrywart," Brooke chided gently. "Some things you just feel in your soul. This is one of them." "The soul is a wonderful thing, Mother," Bridget replied, her gaze steady on Maya. "But a simple blood test is definitive. I can have it done at the hospital this afternoon. For Maya's peace of mind, and for the baby's health." It was the mention of the baby's health that won the argument. No one could oppose that. Will, wanting to do the right thing, agreed immediately. Maya, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, nodded mutely, seeing the test as both a potential reprieve and a terrifying judgment day. The plan was set. Maya would go to the hospital. Bridget would personally oversee the test. The results would be available in a few hours. The family dispersed, their joy momentarily tempered by a sliver of medical pragmatism, but their confidence unshaken. They were Forresters, their reality was what they willed it to be. The revelation, 3 words that shatter a world. The scene in Bridget's office at the hospital was a study in stark contrasts. The room was all clean lines, sterile surfaces, and the faint, antiseptic smell of certainty. It was a world away from the opulent, emotionally charged environment of the mansion. Bridget sat behind her desk, a sealed manila folder in front of her. She had already read the contents, her professional demeanor barely containing the personal shockwave she knew she was about to unleash. Across from her sat Will and Maya. Will's arm was draped protectively around Maya's shoulders, his face a canvas of excited anticipation. Maya was rigid, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. "Well?" Will said, his voice booming in the quiet room. "Give us the good news, Aunt Bridget. What's the official word? Are we having a boy or a girl?" "Too early to tell, right?" He laughed, a bright, nervous sound. Bridget didn't smile. She looked from Will's eager face to Maya's terrified one. She saw the plea in Maya's eyes, a silent scream for this to be over. "The results are back," Bridget began, her tone carefully neutral, a doctor delivering news, not a relative sharing joy. "And?" Will prompted, leaning forward. Bridget opened the folder, though she already knew what it said. She let her eyes scan the page, allowing a beat of dramatic silence to stretch, a silence that seemed to suck all the air from the room. Then, she looked up, her gaze locking directly with theirs. "She isn't pregnant." The 3 words landed not as a sentence, but as a physical force. They were simple, clinical, and utterly devastating. For a moment, there was no sound. The world seemed to have stopped on its axis. Will's face underwent a rapid, horrifying transformation. The eager smile melted away, replaced by a blank confusion that then curdled into dawning comprehension and finally, a raw, gut punch of betrayal. His arm slipped from Maya's shoulders as if she were made of hot coal. Maya made a small, choked sound, like a wounded animal. She squeezed her eyes shut, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It was the confirmation of her deepest fear. The charade was over. What? Will whispered, the word torn from him. What did you say? The HCG levels are negative, Will, Bridget explained, her voice softening with pity. Maya is not pregnant. Her symptoms were likely due to stress or a hormonal fluctuation. It happens more often than you'd think. But Will was no longer listening to the medical explanation. He was staring at Maya, his eyes wide with a hurricane of emotions, shock, humiliation, and a fury that was beginning to boil over. The aftermath, a storm of encouraging words and angry threats. The fallout from Bridget's revelation fractured the family into two opposing camps, defined by the language they used, one of protective, albeit belated, encouragement, and the other of blistering, accusatory threats. The camp of encouraging words, Bridget's sanctuary. Bridget, having delivered the blow, immediately shifted into her role as both healer and protector. She saw the devastation on both their faces and understood the toxic dynamic that had led them here. As Will stormed out of the office without a backward glance, Bridget moved to kneel in front of Maya, who was now sobbing silently, her body trembling. Maya, look at me, Bridget said, her voice firm but kind. This is not your fault. Do you understand me? You are not to blame for their assumptions. These were the first true encouraging words Maya had heard in weeks, words based in reality, not fantasy. I tried to tell them, Maya stammered between sobs. I said I wasn't sure, but they were all so happy. I couldn't. I know, Bridget said, handing her a tissue. You were caught in a tidal wave. This family has a way of rewriting reality to suit its own narrative. You were brave just to survive it. This is a medical fact, not a moral failure. Your worth is not, and never was, tied to a pregnancy test. Bridget's encouragement was a lifeline. It was about validating Maya's experience, absolving her of the guilt that was already crushing her, and reframing the situation from a personal betrayal to a collective misstep. She was building a small shelter of sanity amidst the emotional rubble. Later, Bridget would extend this same rational compassion to her family, though it would be a harder sell. To Brooke, who was weeping about lost grandchildren, she would say, Mother, your encouragement pushed her into a corner. We need to support them as a couple, not as prospective parents right now. To Ridge, who was fuming about the drama, she would state, this was a group hallucination. We all own a piece of this. Now, we need to help them heal. The camp of angry threats, Will's blistering backlash. If Bridget's domain was the quiet hospital room, Will's was the explosive confrontation that erupted back at the Cliff House. The encouraging future he had been sold had been revealed as a fraudulent fantasy, and his rage was absolute. He didn't speak to Maya on the drive home. The silence was a physical wall between them. Once inside, the dam broke. You knew, he roared, his voice echoing off the glass walls. You knew all along and you let me make a fool of myself. You let my family make fools of themselves. Will, no, I didn't know. Maya cried, her hands held up in a pleading gesture. I was scared. Your mom, your grandmother, they were so certain. They wouldn't listen to me. Don't you dare blame my family, he shot back, advancing on her. His anger was a tangible force in the room. This is on you. You could have stopped it. You could have gone to a doctor yourself weeks ago. Instead, you let us all live a lie. You let me stand there while my grandfather talked about his legacy. I've never been so humiliated in my entire life. These were not just angry words, they were threats, threats to their relationship, to her place in the family, to the very fabric of their shared reality. What was your plan, Maya? He sneered, his voice dripping with venom. Were you just going to wait it out? Hope for a miracle? Or were you going to fake a miscarriage? Is that it? Was this some twisted scheme to lock me down? How can you say that? She whispered, horrified. I love you. Love? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. This isn't love. This is manipulation. You have betrayed me in a way I didn't even know was possible. The threats continued, each one carving a deeper chasm between them. I can't even look at you right now. I don't know how we come back from this. You've ruined everything. His anger was a shield against his own profound hurt and embarrassment. He felt like a puppet, and he was directing all his fury at the person he perceived as the puppeteer. The ripple effect, a family divided. The news, delivered by a shell-shocked Will, ripped through the rest of the family like shrapnel. Steffi was livid, her protective maternal instincts warping into a fierce condemnation of Maya. I knew it. I knew she was too weak for this family. She played you, Will. She played all of us. This is unforgivable. Her encouragement was now exclusively for her son, morphing into a demand for retribution. Liam and Hope were caught in the middle, their hearts breaking for both Will's pain and Maya's isolation. Hope, in particular, tried to be a voice of reason. Will, she was scared. We all bear some responsibility. We pushed too hard. But her